Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
What a delight. I get to interview two of Denmark's rising stars in the metal scene, in the prog metal scene. From Advocacy, we have bassist Peter Julesgaard. Say hi, Peter.
Hi.
And singer and guitarist Soren Kjeldsen.
Hello, everyone.
All right. The new album is The Path of Decoherence, and it really captivated me all year. And I'm sorry it took so long for me to get in touch with you guys, but as I was looking back at some of my favorite albums of the year, this one stood out. And I reached out to Uprising Records and I said, get me in touch with those fantastic musicians. And here we are.
Great. Yep.
So
better later than sooner.
better late than never. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
better later than.
There it is. And so the album came out in January. And how has the reaction been all year? And how does the year feel now that it's been out?
If I'm to start, I think Uprising, our label, has been very good at pushing it internationally in ways that we couldn't do ourselves. So it's been awesome to follow it, reaching people like you or reading some international sites. Perhaps we would be able to that we have had all the time ourselves, but to see that it's being from a small country in Denmark and people in general gave a very positive response also here in Denmark. That's been awesome as a band that is still, even though we formed in 2015, we are fish in the pond, but we're still a very small fish. So be able to reach on a global scale some fans of this kind of music has been awesome.
Excellent. Peter, how has 2024 been for you now that Path of Decoherence is out?
Calendar-wise, it's been busy. We've had a lot of shows in Denmark. Both at festivals and a minor national tour, you could call it, with a fellow Aarhusian band of ours, where we played pretty much everywhere we could get our hands on. So it's been packed, but it's also been great. There's been great reception live of the new songs at places like Copenhagen Metal Fest, especially, and the 25-year anniversary of the online magazine heavymetal.dk.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some great audience responses to the new material, and some people had already learned quite a lot of the lyrics, judging by how much they could sing along to.
And that's tough because there's a lot of lyrics. These songs are saturated with music, and obviously saturated with music, but just different musical elements that come in and out. And there's different melodies that come in and out, but it's all very cohesive as opposed to it being decohesive. So I was so struck by how much I liked it. And you could compare, of course, this, you're in the same pond, because you mentioned Fish earlier. You're in the same pond as Threshold and maybe Symphony X and Dream Theater and those sorts of groups. But you're in good company there. And I feel like they're in good company with you being added to the mix. So I hope you'll take that as a compliment.
Definitely.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
And starting this band, I also think it's with this album, we made some EPs before this. And I really think this album, of course, it's a debut album, but we've done a lot of work beforehand. And some of the songs are pretty old, but they have all been updated for this release because we have so much time to work on it. So it's just you can throw different names around. I really hope we try to find a sound of our own among those obvious inspirations. So that's great to hear. It's the prog scene is small, especially in Denmark, but also internationally. But internationally, there's just more people. So getting noticed by smaller bands that are not on the Symphony X scale, who just, hey, you made a great album, hey, you did too, and have some kind of network with those guys, even though we haven't met physically, it's just so awesome.
Yeah. There's a couple of others that also brings to mind a little bit of Evergrey and Borealis. It's all in there, and the little bit of, not to give anything away, but the little bit of growling that you do is as you do it in flourishes, which is what I would prefer. I don't love growling, but when it's done in the way that you did it, kind of like at the end of Deranged, that's the way to do it. Just do it for, a few seconds and just lace it in there little bits. Otherwise, you've got this big, strong voice. And I was wondering what your, yeah, you're welcome. Well, you're a great singer. And I was wondering what your vocal training is, if any.
Well, when I was younger, I tried some professional training. I had this when I was about 17, 18. I tried to find a local vocal coach, and I said, okay, I'm inspired, especially there's the Swedish band called Pain of Salvation, who has a singer called Daniel Gilnu, and I have this natural deep voice. So when I started to do cleans, I was in a death metal band before. I always listen to these prog bands, these 4-octave singers, and some of them are just have a more natural high timbre. And I was like, who can teach me to, like, at times reach those high notes? And I think, like, I tried some different vocal coaches, but like the first one, like what she brought into practice as rock was, I think, was Blue / Elton John, like was very, and then some musical training, but I picked up a few techniques along the way, and I just think I just doing it with the band and trying to put out the mentality, like trying to keep improving, like my bottom line. Okay, so this high note I don't have to be that stressed about anymore, and then I suddenly just build on, and I'm not. To be honest, I can't do every fucking single note perfectly every time live either. But the bottom line of being able to doing it live is steadily improving when I'm not having a cold or anything like that. But I am trying to figure out singers who has the same deep baritone voice, but pushes themselves to reach those, like, not all the time, but doing it like almost with the deaf vocals, as you say, like. Embrace the natural voice and then sometimes try to push your boundaries. That's been working for me so far.
Yeah,
it's also been.
Go ahead.
There's to add to that. There's also quite a bit of it that was different in the recording process this time around. We had a lot of retakes of the vocals, not necessarily to fix mistakes, but in some cases it was just a case of, okay, which timbre should we go with for this part? I remember, especially, you mentioned Deranged before. We can use that again as a great example. Yeah. There's a part in the song where I think you more or less by accident had done a take with a much darker timbre to the vocals, and while we were flipping through them in the studio with Frederik Ulebjerg, we noticed that. I was like, that's hella cool. We need 3 more takes like that. And then you had to go and do a lot more vocal takes.
Yeah, and that's a process, because this time around, like we did it, like we recorded most of the stuff ourselves. We did record stuff ourselves, and that kind of approach to album recording has its advantages and disadvantages, because you can really feel free, and especially when you got jobs and children. The possibility to do it in your own time without having to book a studio for a month just creates some flexibility. But it also, like, in a positive but also frustrating and learning way, gives some experiences to what works and doesn't work with such an approach to album recordings.
And despite there's no central theme to this album. There's a lot of ideas that could connect. I think there's a lot of maybe psychological or inner topics that are explored, but you're definitely exploring social aspects and culture, and in addition, possibly even global.
Yeah.
And I think that's encapsulated right here by this wonderful artwork. But like the mind, the body, the earth, it's all there. And I think that's another reason why it resonated so much with me this year. And when you do an album like this, I think prog is a very natural subgenre to lend itself to these sorts of topics. And you've got these songs they're not super long, but they're pretty long. They're in the 6 to 8 minute range often. And these are like mini marathons for each song, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like many genres of metal and rock music like encapsulates like the working musician in my view, but especially prog music, like it's both a big strength that it really puts the pressure on both myself as a musician and as a vocalist, just wanting to do better, especially when you're inspired by musicians who are just like so fucking amazing a lot of the time, and who can do this kind of mix of making groove and melody and coherence while also making very complex music, and being able to do approximately the same performance live has been just a great growing experience as a band, especially as Peter talked about with all these concerts we've had these years following the release.
Does Peter hit every note when he's live?
Yeah. I think I'm actually, I think we are so caught up mostly in trying to be active and performers and still being able to play our parts. I don't know really live if we notice like
you're in the zone. Yeah.
Mostly the drummer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because
I notice your vocals a lot because I need them for as a guideline when I have to do all the backing stuff. And I mean, hit every note. I pretty much always run out of breath at the end, ending growls of Deranged, because that is fast, and I'm kind of kicking myself for recording that. That was easy to do in the studio, not so easy to do live.
That's good. So it's a challenge every time that you're up on stage. Peter, do you use a pick or do you play with your fingers?
Fingers.
Oh yeah, okay. And
I do too much weird stuff to switch between a pick and other techniques at the same time. So
that's excellent. As a kid, I played bass. So when I listen to music, oftentimes my ears go to the bass a lot. And what's nice about this album is it's a prog metal album, of course, but there's other elements in there, and you can actually hear the bass all the time, which is great. And Leap of Faith leads with a bass line, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Did you write the template for that song? How did that one come about?
So Leap of Faith was the first major piece of work by one of our guitarists, Peter Walker. And he had written out most of the song, and then we all kind of rehashed it and worked on it cohesively. And the intro of it was a very simplified version of what I ended up playing.
You stripped it down.
Well, no, I added a lot of stuff.
So you made it tougher. Okay.
Yeah. So if you take what's happening and pretty much only play all the quarter notes, that's what was there already. And I found that awkward and like a good starting point, but definitely not finished. And so I added a lot of pizzazz. Because what else are you supposed to do?
Right. You got to make it interesting. You got to captivate the audience. And you also do that around the 4 or 4:30 minute mark in star formation. There's some time for the bass to do its work. And I think that's nice that we want the bass to shine a little bit, because this is a very guitar and keyboard driven genre, an album for that matter. So do you feel a special responsibility when you have the spotlight?
Definitely. Especially now that you mentioned star formation. It's not a tricky riff in terms of speed per se, but it's a lot of ninth chords or ninth arpeggios. both on bass and guitar, as is later mirrored and slowly builds and gets more and more increasingly annoying to play. That's definitely my own fault, because I wrote that riff and wanted something to like build before the guitars came on and started harmonizing. And it's just such a stretch. Like, your fingers are so far apart while playing it, and it's almost painful.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like trying to do the record justice while on stage is always like a moment of concentration and remembering to stay relaxed. But it's also fun. Like when it works and it's in the pocket, it slaps.
That's excellent. And I think my favorite song on this album is, I think it was one of the earliest singles, is Cut Loose. I would guess that's kind of like a fan favorite or an audience favorite. And Soren's got a tiny little bit of echo in there. Stay clear, but stay near. I love that part. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. And so you're repelling people, but you're also asking them not to go too far. And that's the theme of that one, I guess, as somebody is trying to move on with their life or try something new. You don't have to tell us the meaning of that song. That's just my interpretation. But if you want to tell us something, give us a little insight into that one. I would love to know more about Cut Loose.
That's definitely Soren's hit, Park.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's one. I think it's one of the oldest. Like it was a song that back in 2017, even before when Peter joined the band, there was a version in that lineup in the band, but it was shorter and it didn't have as much dynamics. And like I just came up with that kind of groovy riff and the chorus because it was like it is probably our most pop rock chorus. Like it's very catchy to the point that I think we still enjoy playing it, but it's also so fucking catchy that we also got a bit annoyed because the chorus is just it is very I'm very proud of that chorus. And I think the themes you were talking about, like I think it hits it pretty spot on. And I have a background as a psychologist, and I think generally with the lyrics on this album, like you said, we touch on very different themes, but I try avoid to be too specific. Like I don't talk specifically or sing about climate change or political ideologies, but like the theme is more implied. And to me, Cut Loose was especially related to like emotional struggles, and especially working with clients. And also I know the tendency myself, like you wanting to be people to get closer, but you do the opposite, like subconsciously. And that's what you cited there. The tendency is like, okay, come close or stay near. Like that's very much the theme of that song, also combined with, I think, a bit of religious fundamentality, like caution, like being caught up in something that might seem tempting, but also destructive in at the same time. So yeah, it's a mixture of personal struggles, but also like what do you cling on to go through life without being too concrete. So people are allowed to put into it what they want, and also I think there's also a bit of a self-defensive mechanism, trying to avoid getting into trouble, saying something that I don't know much about, or trying to take a too strict position that will push people away that doesn't necessarily agree, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. You want people sometimes you just want things or people at arm's length. And other times you need to, wrap yourselves around them or them around you. I understand.
And create the possibility of people, like, because that's the most praise I can get for my lyrics. Like, I think my process it has to be one. They mustn't be cringy,
right? And
two, they mustn't be too ambitious that they might possibly fail or be cringy in a different kind of way. So when people say that they got this meaning out of it, or they got this sense of it, then there's okay, I succeeded in some kind of way.
Excellent. Peter, when you heard the final mix of that song, did you say, whoa, we've got we've got a true standout right there.
It definitely felt like this is definitely something that could serve as a lead single in some way, because I mean, as we've established, it is quite catchy, but it's also relatively concise while still containing all the bells and whistles that you would expect of a prog album, with like varying dynamics and wheedly parts and solos and odd time signatures and very different moods throughout the song, but all still sticking within the sub 7 minute time limit. So it definitely felt like, okay, this is, it feels a little bit cold-hearted to say, but like, this is a very commercial song. Was a feeling. It was like, this is something that a lot of people, like, if you're a hardcore prog fan, then you could enjoy it. But also, if you just like listening to rock on the radio, then it could also work in that setting. And it really felt like we captured a lot of different good ideas in a palatable package. And then we got a bit more extreme, or like, not that we're an extreme metal band, but we went a bit further away from what you would consider a mainstream package deal on some of the other songs. But yeah, it was definitely like approachable.
I get you. And there's nothing wrong with having a commercial sounding song. It's not the equivalent of Owner of a Lonely Heart. That's totally different.
No,
right?
no. And that's the cool thing about, like, we didn't do it on this album, but I still like have on my bucket list to do like a progressive ballad, like to do just a clean song, because that's what I love about prog music. Like, you can, like a band like Opeth, which is also a big inspiration to me, is like you can do these death metal prog or prog death metal compositions, and then you can make like a more folky prog ballad, and that's also what like has me very hooked on into this genre, is because like it allows to do those kinds of things as long as it makes sense within this weird abstract prog.
Well, you have a pretty wide canvas, so there's a lot you could throw in there. And I think that's one of the reasons why you stand out to me. So I think this is such a cool album. And I think it's fascinating, Soren, that you mentioned your background as in the psychology field. Let's talk about the word decoherence for a minute, because that's a good vocabulary word, and it means it has to do a lot with quantum physics and quantum computing, right? All right. So I'm going to read the definition. You tell me. It's, in physics, the process in which a system's behavior changes from that which can be explained by quantum mechanics to that which can be explained by classical mechanics. So is that what you were going for? Is it that do you know less now? Is that what decoherence means? Or do you have to translate it in your mind? What's going on?
We have two physicists in the band. Me being one of them.
Hard science and soft science are very much combined in this band.
Yes, that's where it comes from. We've dissected it. So, Peter, is that you? You're the physicist?
I'm one of them. I'm the dumber physicist because the other guy's got a PhD. I haven't. But no. So it was chosen for a variety of reasons, and one of them is kind of just a play on words, because if you just look at decoherence, it's just coherence with a negation at the front. So it could also be understood as the path for things to fall apart. Yeah. In general, this could be from a psychological perspective, or a grand political perspective, or a very practical perspective. Let's say you're walking on a bridge, and then it's bad if it gets decoherent. But there was also a metaphor from the quantum mechanical bordering case, because it's depending on which kind of calculation. Like, if you have your set of equations that defines the world, then when decoherence happens, either you go from the quantum mechanical paradigm into the world of classical mechanics, or the other way around. Again, depending on where you start and where you're going. So like there is a kind of implicit meaning of having to change the paradigm under which you understand the world. The equations you use to understand your physics are no longer valid because you've changed over to a case where you have to use a different set of equations. And this metaphor applied to a more vague situation, but also more widely usable situation is like having to change your worldview to make sense of what's around you again.
Yeah. It's a complicated, it's simultaneously complicated and simple. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I love it. Is there anything else that you would like to say to those listening about the path of decoherence?
Well, yeah, go buy it. Now it's this is the debut album, so I think it will always have a special meaning for any band, and like reaching this point, like I'm the only founding member from back in 2015.
Oh, you're the only one left?
Yeah, and then Peter joined in 2017, 18 or something.
Late 17.
Late 17, and I was just like, this was kind of like in a different version. I would just have given up with this project because it takes time and it's not the easiest genre to get musicians to play, because especially I think also internationally people are more into the other great genres of thrash and death metal, thrash and death metal. So we reached this lineup with the current lineup about 2019, and then Søren Vind, another guitarist, joined later, and then COVID happened, and we could play around in the rehearsal space, but like 4 years disappeared for like highly ambitious plans. So reaching this point is kind of like, okay, it's also like a testament to pat ourselves a bit on the back, to our willpower to just keep going, making this kind of music that, in spite of Kavus perhaps being a bit commercial, isn't very commercial. So it's been a tough birth to get this album out, and we learn about a lot from the recording process, as I said earlier. And right now we are doing demos for the new releases, and we are very much looking back on this release, which in a few months will be a years old. So I think if you're into, like, if you haven't heard the album, and I think when I made this band, I wanted to, like, very inspired by a band like Opeth and Tool, and said, okay, I don't want to do really death metal anymore. I want to do this very melodic, progressive sound, like Opeth without the death vocals. But then came a band like Soen who actually did that. And then I think, especially getting a musician like Peter, who also has a very strong background in more technical extreme metal, like, if you're into the more classic, conventional, melodic, groovy prog metal, like this will be the sound for you. But we also try to put in like more extreme genres to spice things up. So I hope as long as you're into this kind of complex music, I think there will be a bit for everyone in this album, because our inspirations are pretty wide. And you mentioned a band like Symphony X. I never thought I was going to do something with this band that had this kind of prog power vibe, but also with some of the newer songs we're working on, like, okay, apparently my baritone voice also works well in this kind of strong power metal approach. So if you're into those kind of bands like Evergrey or Soen or Opeth and Tool, and a band like Hagen is also a big inspiration, I really think you should check it out.
All right. And Peter, are you excited for what's next?
Absolutely.
What's coming up? What's coming up that you can reveal?
What's coming? I think our most power metal inspired song to date is coming up, as well as probably, I don't know, as probably also our most mellow song, which is also incidentally has some very diverse stuff is coming up. We're like some of the new songs that I've just finished edited or like cutting together different takes of drum tracks. They're like, it's both from power metal over like very melodic, mellow sections over a black metal, a straight up black metal. And I have a very, like vocal wise, I have a very central role for, I think, about 30 seconds or 40 seconds or so, where we're really leaning into my growls with Soren's cleans and the duality of that. We're definitely pushing the palette, pushing the boundaries on the upcoming work.
Excellent.
And to add a bit, and to add a bit to that, like I don't think we're not changing our sound. Like if you like this album, it was still like the next release will still have the same basic components. But I really, as Peter said, I think some of the extreme metal influences will be a bit more extreme. And I think without giving too much away, like also like a band like Leprous, like Peter talked about this black metal part, like some of their earlier works, like combine this blackened prog approach, like is also something I'm looking forward. Also, especially vocals wise, I can't sound like like him, but I'm also trying to push myself more vocally this time around. So. Yeah. I think it will be a natural progression, but also very exciting to hear if people will notice, okay, now they're trying to do something different for this next album.
Well, I think Advocacy is... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
To shortly sum it up, I think it would be to say that we're doing the same thing again, but more of everything, more of every influence we have.
Got it. Well, I think Advocacy is great. And really captured my attention, and I look forward to what might be on the horizon. And if this planet here survives onto the next offering, and I just want to congratulate you again and thank you so much. I wish you only continued success.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having us.
Special thanks again to Soren and Peter of Advocacy.
Free audio post-production.
Path of Decoherence is now available everywhere from our friends at Uprising Records. This is one of my favorite albums of 2024. At the top and in the middle of the video interview, you heard a clip of Cut It Loose, and now we are hearing another track that we referenced. It's called Star Formation. You can visit Advocacy online and on social through the links on this interview's notes. And as always, remember to make legitimate purchases of the music, merch, and tickets to support hardworking artists like Advocacy. Folks, head on over to the revamped JaceMediaMusic.com page. We've got reviews, we've got interviews, we've got all kinds of great music coverage. Check out some of my recent video interviews with my all-time favorite metal singer, John Bush of Armored Saint and Category 7. The drummer of Category 7 and Shadows Fall, Jason Bittner. Guitar heroes like Herman Frank of Victory, Gus G. of Firewind, and Michael Stutzer of Artillery, and rock and metal singers like Wade Black, Nick DeSalvo of Elder, Fate's Warning singer Ray Alder, and members of Metalite, Dustbolt, Masterplan, and more. Special thanks, as always, to our fantastic founder and publisher, Glenn, and all of my Jace Media colleagues. And of course, special thanks to you, the worldwide Jace Media music audience. Look for Jace Media on Facebook and X and Instagram and basically every social media channel you can think of. I am Justin Smolison, proud Jace Media contributor from across the pond. Thank you again for tuning in. Keep coming back to jacemediamusic.com. I've got more video interviews on the way.